Afternoon Karak with Aisha Al-Mazmi and Mikhail Atiyah.
On Pulse 95.
You know those things that happen in cartoons and you're like, this can't really happen in real life. This is just crazy. Such as, the whole cliche of stepping on a banana peel and slipping. So
it's plausible, but I mean, it's highly unlikely.
It's very cartoonish. It's like it only happens in cartoons. Well, even though I did not slip on a banana peel, thank God, alhamdulillah, but something very cartoonish happened to me last night while I was making dinner. I was making this pasta dish. It's well known. It's basically just, instead of having like a very thick and heavy sauce, the sauce is just some olive oil and some red chili pepper flakes and some garlic. It's very simple, it's traditional, it's very nice and very light on your stomach. So I was having that for dinner and I was making the sauce, which again, olive oil, garlic, and you let the pepper flakes just like kind of cook a little bit, let the oil infuse, and I started sneezing 4 times in a row because I got pepper flakes up my nose.
Oh my God.
I was like, that feels very comical. I'm glad nobody's around to watch me have like a sneezing fit because I somehow managed to get chili pepper flakes up in my nose.
Okay, you didn't drop anything, right?
I didn't see that. That's
the whole kitchen didn't explode.
No, honestly, what was surprising is that how on earth did it even get in my nose? Because it was in my hands because I was trying to manage the quantity because I don't want it to be incredibly spicy, even though it is quite spicy and really good. I have to add that. But I was like, okay, put some in my hand, then I put the rest in the container, and in the process, I'm not sure. Maybe maybe
you scratched your nose. You did this,
or maybe some small particles somehow got into my nose, but I just felt like this, not even an itch, just like, an obstruction in my nose, and then suddenly one sneeze after the other, and I was like, what is this? Am I in a cartoon? Is this real life anymore? So it was very comical, but also very slightly like, thank God nobody's around, because they would have been like, what
did
is
you make sure
on?
to say alhamdulillah afterwards?
Oh, actually, I don't think I did, because it was 4 times in a row and I was like very confused and shocked and was like, what just happened to me? I may have forgotten, actually.
Well, better out than in. That's what I say. It's Sunday. I've never been more excited for a Sunday in my entire life.
Really?
Because
of a review.
Because of this movie,
yes.
The Green Knight. It is a highly anticipated film that we've been dying to watch, and now we're getting the chance to review it. I'm so excited. There's so much to talk about. But also, that's not the only thing we're doing for this hour.
Oh yeah, definitely. We've got lots to talk about. We actually have a bunch of Marvel updates. It all basically covers a lot of things. One of them being Riri Williams. We're also going to be talking about some interviews Kevin Feige had that he basically said that, one, do not put away the idea of a Marvel and DC crossover, which is super exciting. And also he talks about how he needs to have enough time basically for the different phases to marinate so we can get a proper team up in Avengers 5. We're also going to be talking about DC and the CEU and Black Canary. We met her all the way back in Birds of Prey, and apparently, according to this rumor, she is going to be having her standalone movie.
Awesome. We're also going to have a little bit of an update about Skyrim. Apparently, it's getting a next-gen upgrade. 10 years since the game came out.
Goodness.
Bethesda just can't stop milking it.
Absolutely
that and so
not.
much more. Coming up next, the epic fantasy tale, The Green Knight review, right here on the Afternoon Karak.
Is it an epic or epic failure? The Big Review. Movies, games, and TV in focus.
Pulse 95.
If you guys have been tuning into the Afternoon Karak since last year, you would have heard Mikhail and I just be on the verge of crying every time we remember The Green Knight and how we have been waiting for the release date and how A24 kept on teasing us since beginning of last year, and then finally we get the release date, and then it turns out that the UAE is getting it like a good week and a half later, and then it's finally released and we have finally watched it, and here we are finally reviewing the movie starring Dev Patel as Sir Gawain, the nephew of King Arthur, as he basically ventures into the woods and into an adventure in an attempt to keep a promise he made with the Green Knight.
Yes, it is a journey of patience, just like how we've been patiently waiting for this movie. It's also a journey to define himself and prove his worth to the eyes of his family and his kingdom. And little does he know how much this journey will change him forever. And let's just first talk about in terms of how the movie sets itself. Everything from the mist to the tone of color.
Goodness, the colors.
The music.
The colors. I've been sitting there. When I finished that movie, I was sitting with my friend and I was like, I need to think about the colors. The friend was like, what? I'm like, no, I'm trying to figure out the colors. What do the colors mean? Because we know obviously the greens, there was a lot of greens associated with the Green Knight, the greenery, etc. And even green is a very common color in this sort of setting and this sort of themes, especially since the Green Knight is actually based on a very, very old medieval poem. So it kind of fit with the motif. But then the yellows, the reds, the blues, those were the ones that were confusing me a little bit.
Yeah.
I wanted to figure out what exactly were they trying to indicate. Because the interesting thing is, I obviously did not go and read the poem because I cannot read medieval English. But I did actually look it up and was reading through it and searching through it. There were some big differences, especially because obviously it's 824. But the difference is how Dev Patel, basically, they made Sir Gawain and made sure that Dev Patel brought out the humanity in him. Because when you talk about King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, you think about valiant, you think about power, strength, bravery. And if you read the poem, you know that it's all about how Sir Gawain was like, I'm gonna do this, I'm super strong, I'm gonna keep up with my, I'm a true knight. But throughout this entire movie, you can tell that Gawain is anything but a human being.
Yeah, he's very flawed.
Incredibly flawed.
Throughout the journey, he's being tested by his virtues are being tested, and we don't want to spoil anything where his journey leads him to, because a lot of it is best left to the mystery firsthand as you experience it for yourself. Just to add to Aisha, in terms of the color, there was a drabbiness to everything, but there are certain things that were distinctive and bright, like his cloak was very bright, like goldish yellow.
It was very yellow, yes.
And the forest was bright green. And it's very rare that I ever say this, but it's for, this movie's color emits a lot of emotion. I feel, I get these feelings when I'm watching it of hopelessness, of dread, of even sometimes the color reflect, maybe a danger ahead, or this sense of sadness or loneliness. How it goes from immediate blue to red, and it's like, oh my God,
yes,
it's so dreamy. It's such a dreamlike experience for the first time when you watch this movie.
It definitely feels like it's not on this earth. Like I don't mean it's like, oh, it's very alien-like, but it, just like Mikhail said, it transports you to a magical realm, which is very interesting because there are some very obvious religious motifs in addition to the magic realism that was apparent throughout the movie. And those colors is where the whole magic is. That's where the essence of the movie, even though a lot of times throughout the movie there wasn't much happening, it's just him riding through the forest, and even the small things that happen here and there, you can feel how minuscule they are. And what I mean by that is that usually when there is an action scene in any sort of movie, you feel the action, you feel the movement, you feel the sense of urgency. But here, you're very detached. You're watching from afar as Gawain just basically has to make those decisions. He falls into problems, into traps. It's like this whole disconnect that simultaneous to you, like immerses you in the movie, but also kind of tells you that this is a tale being told to you.
Yeah.
You're not living Gawain's story. You're watching Gawain go throughout his story.
And you always have this question when you're watching the 2-hour film, is this, how much of this is real? how much of this is actually happening? Are we seeing through his mind, or are we seeing something else? And I think that's the best part about this film, is that it is in the truest form a poem, a fairy tale.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And, you know, old fairy tales don't have logic to them, but they have a lot of mysticism and
and also they deliver specific themes. But like I said earlier, because this is A24 and the director is trying to interpret it for a modern audience, it is quite different in that sense, where the themes are not those very solid. Basically, they talk about something completely different, and we're going to continue talking about this review in a little bit. We're going to take a short break, let's take a little lap walking around the studio. We're going to be back again with more of The Green Knight from A24, starring Dev Patel.
Pulse 95.
We are continuing our extensive review of the epic fantasy tale that is The Green Knight. This is a highly anticipated film we've been dying to watch, produced by A24 Productions, starring Dev Patel. We've been talking a lot about the elements of this movie in terms of cinematography, in terms of the character, in terms of the acting itself, and even the colors. And now I think we should talk a little bit about that music, the soundtrack, and how it complements the film itself. For me, the way I saw it was like very old, churchy kind of music.
It's your
of
typical,
medieval times,
it's
you know?
very typical medieval sort of interpretation, or, you know, high fantasy interpretation of, this sort of music. But for me, it's the silence. The silence is where it brings the story together, because again, that's the moment of where, yes, we are watching from afar, but it also kind of breaks the fourth wall in a way. Like, it's like, oh, we're not watching anymore. We're not audiences. We're actually might be there, maybe watching him from a bird's eye view as he continues on his journey. And I think that is a very important element that, when people usually talk about negative space when in art, as in instead of filling an entire space with a certain thing, you basically utilize the emptiness, and that is exactly what they do in this movie when they insert those silences in between, because the silence also indicates like many things, because the quietness is very deafening. It also makes it very realistic that yes, I am watching it with him. I am there in that scene, but I'm watching it from afar. I'm observing what he's saying, and it also basically, when you put the silence, it removes all the noise, everything, and it makes you focus on that one thing.
Yeah.
And perhaps instead of focusing on Gawain himself physically, maybe his thoughts will come through. You see the panic, the questioning, the ideas that go through him, and also his youthfulness, because it feels like an absolute child, even though he is somewhat a knight, or let's say an adult, a young adult, but he feels such a child inside.
There is a deliberate artistic choice when it comes to the how they utilize silence and the music, and I think also dialogue, because this movie has not much dialogue going for it. But that's the best part, is that it forces us as the audience to rely on other things to absorb, like the characters' emotes and how they're feeling those moments. The surrounding itself.
Yeah.
If there are times, if you're watching very carefully with these wide, long shots, there's something moving in the background. There's always, I kept rewinding at some parts of it. I'm like, what is that?
Yeah.
That's what I like about it, is that you really become a lot more attentive to other details.
Absolutely.
Removing some of your other senses to really heighten a particular sense, whether it's hearing or visual. It's just,
definitely.
I love it. It's so much fun.
And what's interesting is that even though like an hour in, you think, is the movie ending? But we have like at least an hour to go. What is going on? And what is very interesting, because despite the idleness of the movie, despite the fact that it feels like nothing is happening, a lot of things happen as well. And it also indicates how it feels like to go on a journey. Sometimes it is, very quiet. Sometimes it is boring. Sometimes it is very lonely, and that is what we feel. I'd say the only thing that kind of confused me, or perhaps did not have much of an addition into the movie, is the scenes with his mother, Morgan Le Fay. And I'm not trying to, ruin the movie too much or spoil it, because she is supposedly somewhat of a witch. But then it's like kind of felt, out of place or misplaced because it did not make sense to me. Perhaps it's my fault. I'm not sure. Maybe I need to go and watch or read something extra. But I feel like if you need to go and search and read, some extra material, perhaps the movie has failed in this part, which is why for me, I would give the movie my final verdict is 8 out of 10.
For me, The Green Knight is a beautiful fantasy tale. Even when I don't fully understand what is going on, everything from production, acting, the score, the cinematography seems fully realized, and that's the beauty of The Green Knight. It is to me numbing yet electrifying to the senses. It is symbolic yet so simple as a story, and even more so. How do I say it? It has so much meaning, yet so little meaning. And so for me, I'm going to give The Green Knight 9 out of 10. The only issue is that it's a movie that will challenge you, intellectually speaking, and it demands your patience. But if you can do that, there's something so rewarding by the end of this film when you finish it.
It definitely demands your patience, but part of me is are they trying a little bit too hard at demanding your patience? Not the patience part, sorry, but the whole adding layers and layers of the movie. At some point, I was maybe that's a little bit too much added to it. Maybe it could have been a little bit simpler. Again, I'm not saying that, the colors, I loved every bit of it. I loved the background, the scenery, like I said, the silence, the dimensions to the movie. But sometimes they do take it a little bit further than it needs to be. And when you overcomplicate a movie, that's when, my opinion, where it loses its essence. But all in all, it is a very enjoyable experience, but perhaps it is not for everyone. We're going to move on to Dave Bautista, who wants to star in a buddy cop movie with Jason Momoa, coming up next right here on the Afternoon Karak.
This is Pulse 95.
Buddy cop movies are a part of a genre that have been basically existed since the beginning of God knows when. Since movies began.
Since action flicks existed.
Exactly. It's just always been a part of the action genre, and most of the time they're kind of misses rather than hits. It's very rare that we remember any sort of buddy cop movie except for Rush Hour maybe, and I'm trying to remember Bad Boys. But besides that, if I ask you, Mikhail, name any other buddy cop movie that was interesting and really good and has some sort of impact. Usually they're just those random flicks here and there, action flicks, comedy flicks.
There was one with Kevin Hart and Ice Cube. Sorry, is that his name? Sorry.
Yeah, that is Ice Cube.
Yeah, it was called Road Trip or Bad Trip, or I can't remember.
But that wasn't really a buddy cop movie. It's about, I think it was one. Kevin Hart was supposed to marry Ice Cube's daughter or something like that. So that's more of a comedy.
I remember Central Intelligence. It had Kevin Hart and The Rock. No,
not really.
Didn't work.
No, it didn't work. Again, if I go out and be name a buddy cop movie, they're not gonna say Central Intelligence. Again, like I said, Rush Hour most likely, and Bad Boys. But now Dave Bautista, he wants to be part of this genre. He says he wants to star in a buddy cop movie with Jason Momoa, and I support that. I definitely support that. I love to see that.
I love Dave because he's the kind of actor who's been very open about just sort of flexing his range as an actor, going for more dramatic, serious roles. And him now, he's like, you know what? I wouldn't mind doing an action comedy film with none other than Jason Momoa, because you have to imagine these are two big, bulky, tough guys, and it's usually in a buddy cop. The formula is that you get someone who's, somewhat
like a tinier person.
There's always somebody different. They're always different from each other.
Exactly. So this would be very interesting, like Mikhail said, to see that. How would they tackle it if they do it? He basically threw that out in a tweet. He says, just going to throw this out into the atmosphere and see what happens. Here we go. Me and Momoa in a Lethal Weapon type buddy cop movie directed by David Leitch. Okay, there it is. Now we wait.
Now we wait. I'd love to hear any announcements from this. Maybe, in a way, he's teasing for some future projects, because we know Momoa and Dave are actually co-starring in the upcoming Dune. So maybe they headed off and they're
actually
probably talking about it.
Actually, they're together in the Apple TV Plus show See as brothers. So they have a good amount of chemistry, perhaps, or a good amount of relationship. I mean, on-screen relationship and perhaps off-screen relationship, enough for Dave to be like, hey, let's do it one more time. Let's do it again in a movie where we are together in it. It'll be very interesting, especially since David, the director, he directed Deadpool 2, Atomic Blonde, and also Fast and Furious Presents Hobbs and Shaw. So he's well into the action genre and he knows what he's doing. So we just wait and see, because more often than not, what's been happening in the social media world is that somebody might just suggest something or say something, and then things do actually happen. So we wait and see.
I mean, if we're never going to get Rush Hour 4, we might as well go for the next best thing.
As a massive fan of Rush Hour, I think I cannot tell you how many times I've watched the movies growing up, but I'm telling you right here, as a massive fan,
let it rest.
Let it rest. Let the series rest. We don't need more Rush Hour movies.
We don't want to hurt Jackie Chan anymore.
Oh no, we don't want to hurt him. But we're gonna move on to our next story. It is a rumor. Misha Green might be penning the upcoming Black Canary movie that is coming to the DCEU. Coming up next after the sports headlines right here on the Afternoon Karak.
Speculation, gossip, or hoax. Rumor has it.
According to Scene Links, they claim that Misha Green has been tapped to write the new Black Canary movie script that apparently is in the making for the DCEU, and they're going to see Jurnee Smollett reprising her role.
That is really interesting because Birds of Prey was a very misleading film, in my opinion. We almost got the whole squad together by the end of the last arc, because I would say for a good chunk of the movie, it just kind of focuses on Harley Quinn. Mm-hmm. And then that last third film of the movie was like, okay, here's the Birds of Prey. So I felt like a lot of the members from that squad, they didn't really get enough screen time, but I would say Black Canary did stand out amongst them.
Definitely, she most definitely did. But then that is usually the consequences of trying to do a team-up movie without setting up the characters before. You end up having perhaps maybe one or two characters in the spotlight, and then eventually you have the team up. So then you might miss out on several characters. But I have to say that, just like Mikhail said, Black Canary did have the spotlight on her in comparison to other characters. So she was quite interesting, and I cannot wait to see her. And it's very interesting that, they actually are betting on this movie, and they're basically continuing the legacy of the Birds of Prey, because even though it was a very interesting concept and a really good movie, a lot of people did not enjoy it for God knows what reason. Even though the things that we tried to do were very good and successful. And in fact, a lot of people noticed that a lot of things that were happening in Birds of Prey were basically inspired some parts of Suicide Squad, the latest version of Suicide Squad. Even though James Gunn says, I haven't seen it, I do not connect the dots, but it is actually very much there. For example, somebody pointed out that the whole part in the Suicide Squad where Harley Quinn, after having her fight scene, and then she kind of starts having the whole delirium where she just basically she sees birds singing and those cartoonish things happening around her.
She goes into a psychedelic montage.
Kind of. That was established first in Birds of Prey. So it is sort of continuation of it in some way, even though they might not be canonically connected within the same universe. I might as well just call it the Harley Quinn cinematic universe at this point, with the amount of different Harley Quinn stories and iterations of her.
She's the most marketable character.
Oh, definitely. But the question is, Black Canary is most likely going to be continuing the story of Birds of Prey, but does it connect to Suicide Squad, the latest one? Does it not? What is happening there? So it's very interesting to wait and see, because again, this is only a rumor, and according to Cineplex, Scene Links, it is just according to their Warner Brothers sources.
And again, because of the rumor, we just have to take this lightly until we get any confirmation from Warner Bros. Or HBO themselves. But I know with recent plans, they are making tons of DC-related projects from Blue Beetle, the Justice League Dark. So I think this is an obvious report, one that will eventually have a more official announcement.
But the most important part of this report is that, according to the source, it is a Black Canary project.
Okay.
So it could be a series.
Let's
could be
go.
A series.
Let's go for it.
Yes.
Coming up next, we are going to be giving you guys a lot of updates from the world of Marvel. So stay locked and stay tuned right here to the Afternoon Karak.
Pulse 95.
We're going to be giving you guys a bunch of Marvel updates, starting with Kevin Feige, the president of Marvel Studios, officially confirming that Riri Williams, who is Ironheart and is going to be starring in the Ironheart series, she's going to be actually debuting ahead of her self-titled series. She's going to be appearing for the first time in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever.
This is really exciting because I'm familiar with this character just a little bit. She's like this teenage genius who builds her own sort of version of Iron Man. And I think this is sort of like the next phase of somewhat continuing the Iron Man legacy.
Definitely. And we already know that Dominique Thorne is going to be playing the character Riri Williams. So we're very excited to see her. This basically means that we're going to be seeing her way earlier than anticipated, because like we said, we are supposed to initially get her in Ironheart, the series, an MCU TV show. Probably, we're guessing around 2023, at the end of 2023, or 2024, inshallah. But if we get her in Black Panther, that means we're going to be getting her a good amount of months earlier than that.
Yeah, it's a big setup. And speaking of setup, I know in the previous phase, we had a lot of Avenger movies. But it seems like, for the frequency that we had in the previous phase, things are going to slow down. Kevin Feige has said that it's going to be a while before we see a next Avengers film. And it makes a lot of sense because there's still a lot to set up. There's new superheroes, new story arcs, and events that are unfolding. The multiverse just opened up. So we don't know when it's time, to bring in an ensemble movie such as the Avengers.
And the question is, now that we have lost some big essential parts of the Avengers, who are going to be filling those spaces? We don't have Captain America anymore, but we do have the new Captain America, so that we're good with that. But we do not have a Black Widow, even though perhaps maybe Yelena is going to be taking her place. But we just started Yelena's arc. She hasn't been established well into the Avengers and the world of the Avengers, and we don't want to ruin anything. Now, we're just going to say that just to indicate that her story has just begun. We have to wait and see where that takes her. We also have heard that perhaps Hawkeye will be removed from the Avengers lineup, and we might be getting Hawkgirl instead. We have Echo as well. We have perhaps the Young Avengers, because we kind of set them up with Miss Marvel and Riri Williams. So there are so many new characters, and perhaps 2 or 3 team-ups that are happening. The whole thing with Scarlet Witch, and like we said, the thing with Loki and the entire multiverse opening up.
Yep.
And basically the only person who is trying to get things together right now is probably most likely Doctor Strange. So he needs to probably, fix everything up within that aspect before we jump on to a whole lineup with the new version of the Avengers.
Yes, MCU Phase 4 is still ongoing. So until then, we're just going to have to wait and see. However, there's one more thing that really just sparks so much excitement for the fans. And in a recent interview with Kevin Feige himself, he was asked if there was ever going to be a DCEU or a DCEU and Marvel crossover of some kind. And he just said this. He says, never say never. And
that's a very good answer.
Yeah.
That's a diplomatic answer. He's just saying
that's a hopeful answer.
It's a hopeful answer, but also diplomatic, because what he's saying is that if it does happen in the future, it might or it might not happen.
It's going to be crazy.
It's going to be a 50-50 thing, and I feel like perhaps it might not be an MCU crossover. Maybe it's going to be part of the animated series, because we have What If. Maybe they're going to venture down that road and give us another sort of animated series that features Marvel Marvel and DC characters. We just need to wait and see as usual. Maybe they're gonna randomly appear in the multiverse. Who knows? Just randomly for a little bit, get a glimpse of Batman, and that is enough. But again, it will require a lot of setting up and a lot of agreements, etc. We're gonna be taking a short break and moving on to Skyrim, that is getting a next generation upgrade exactly 10 years after its original release. And all we can say is, Bethesda, how far are you gonna go with this series? Give it a rest. Coming up next, right here on the Magic Hour, the Afternoon Karak.
You're listening to Pulse 95.
One of the biggest RPG adventure games out there, the Elder Scrolls series. Skyrim specifically came out about 10 years ago in 2011. And to this day, it's seen as a timeless video game. And what I find very funny is that just like yesterday, I was just on some meme sites, and I started seeing Skyrim memes out of nowhere. And they always make the joke about how Bethesda milks the series, releasing multiple ports and different versions of Skyrim. And I'm thinking, okay, yeah, it's an old joke that happened recently with the PS4. Oh no, it's back again. Bethesda once again has just announced that they are releasing a 10th anniversary of Skyrim for the next gen consoles, the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. And Aisha, I know just deep down she's like, why is this still happening? This is just as bad as Grand Theft Auto, you know?
It is just as bad, but at least the thing with Skyrim is that they somehow managed to port it for the Switch, and I was like, goodness, they've done it. Khalas, they've touched base with every single console. We're good to go. They have Nintendo lovers, they've got PC lovers, they got Sony lovers, basically everybody. What are you doing? Now you're telling me that you're going to recreate it or port it for the next generation, and you're adding fishing too? Listen, I love fishing in games. I love fishing in games.
But 10 years late.
And also, I know that the whole Skyrim community is very well and alive. I mean, with the whole memes and the jokes, and even became a global phenomenon. Even if you haven't played Skyrim, you still understand some of the jokes. But at the same time, I don't get it. Will it actually be successful profit-wise? I don't really think so.
No, not in my opinion. I think it's just there because it just has to be done, you know? Like, they just have a checklist. It needs to be on the next gen. And even if the next Elder Scrolls doesn't come out, which, from what I understand, is going to be until 2026, 2027, by then a new console would come out, and Skyrim will be there with a new port.
Goodness, I didn't know this, but apparently there is even a port for Amazon Alexa.
Yeah, there's a VR version. I remember once in a conference, they joked about playing Skyrim on your smart Samsung fridge. Now, I'm not sure if that's a joke or not, but it's at this point, you know, take it or leave it.
It might as well happen. It just makes absolutely no sense. I mean, this is milking a series way beyond.
At the most finest degree now.
I swear to God, I don't think anybody has milked the series this much, or I don't know what to say. I'm just speechless. I have no idea what Bethesda's thinking of.
I will say this. So if you have not played Skyrim and you got a PS5 and this is the first time you're going to play it, you're going to play the best version of this game.
Mikhail, you're telling me that the people who have a PS5 did not have any other console that Skyrim was already ported to before?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. If you have a PS5 right now, there's a good chance you either had a PS4, an Xbox, or a PC, a Switch, Amazon Alexa, even
So this port was made for the 1%, less than 1%.
Less than 1%. It's 0.0000001% of people who, for some reason, have a PS5 and haven't tried out Skyrim. We're going to be taking a short break, and coming up next, we're going to be taking a very interesting and super helpful suggestion from Mikhail coming up next, right here on the Afternoon Karak.
It's almost 5 p.m.
That was Afternoon Karak.
For dessert,
Aisha and Mikhail suggest
The Green Knight, Marvel, Skyrim, etc., etc. Those are just some of the things we spoke about today in the Magic Hour. That is the afternoon Karak. And if you have missed out, check out our podcast. We have our podcast uploaded a little bit after the show, wherever you listen to podcasts, and that includes Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Rami, SoundCloud. Just search up Afternoon Karak and you will definitely find us. And same goes for our YouTube channel. Our video does go up there as well. It is uploaded and you can see our lovely expressions and our lovely faces right here in the studio. Just search up Pulse 95 Radio and you will find our channel. Like, subscribe, comment, etc., etc. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd also love to hear from Mikhail to give us a super important suggestion that I feel a lot of us have to hear.
So this suggestion really hits home. It's something I'm personally dealing with. I'm struggling with it. I'm learning the hard way. And I remember sometimes Aisha likes to say this, that I put myself in situations
that could have been avoided.
That could have been avoided.
Yes.
And so my suggestion to myself and to all of you guys is learn to say no sometimes, because you just people will take advantage of you saying yes, and you wind up being obligated. You put yourself in predicaments that are baiche, as Aisha would tell me, and you just wind up kind of regretting it. And so it's okay. It's okay to be honest with people and just straight up say no. Don't be shy. Don't be pressured to say otherwise.
Oh, yeah,
and,
definitely.
You save yourself a lot of trouble. And I'm trying to do that right now.
Absolutely. Sometimes even if you don't say no simply because you're a nice person, doesn't mean necessarily that that person is a bad person, but rather that it just shows that you're a nice person that might sometimes occasionally do things that put you in situations that you could have avoided easily. And it just becomes a habit where you just keep saying, yes, I'll do it. Yes, I'll do it. Yes, I'll do it. And then suddenly you have way too many things on your mind.
Big shout out to Big Hass. He says, totally agree. And before we get signed out, can you just say in Arabic? I like the sentence when you say it. Go ahead.
تحط نفسك بمواقف بايخة.
That's a nice way to end out the hour. Guys, unfortunately, the time is up here for the afternoon Karak, but we got Yalla Home coming up next with a Big Hass. So stay tuned, stay locked, and we'll be seeing you guys tomorrow from 4 to 5 only here on Pulse 95.
If you liked this episode of Afternoon Karak, drop a like and subscribe.
Pulse 95.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram for all our daily updates and top stories.